Hey folks, welcome back. I'm joined right now by Matt Golec and Arun Mehra, who are going to tell us about Shapely. So hello, Matt and Arun, and nice to see you.
Hey, how are you?
I'm
Hi,
excellent.
everybody.
So tell us about Shapely.
Well, Shapely is a game about making and guessing shapes. It's a sort of a fun family weight game where you have some really nice tactile shape pieces and you're trying to make words. But of course, the other players can't see what word you're trying to make. Once everyone's made a word, then there's a little bit of a guessing round where people try to figure out which each shape is. And there's a few points scored and a lot of laughs throughout. One neat thing is too, every round, the game's played over 3 rounds, you have to lose a piece. So by the end of the game, you're making shapes with fewer and fewer pieces. It's a fun challenge.
That's awesome. I love the idea that you can get creative with this, even if you're not an artist, like the fact that you are given the shapes. I'm curious about if people have used shapes in ways that like have surprised you during playtesting.
Well, what's amazing is you look at caricatures, and a couple of pen strokes can sort of evoke an image. That's sort of how this works. For whatever reason, sometimes someone is bang on with the weirdest collection of odd shapes, and it's just a position of a shape here or there, and it completely describes or evokes the word that they're trying to express. And that always amazes me in the game on replay, and I'm playing with different folks. Sometimes you just zone in and zero in on that shape, and it just brings this little hit of endorphin or whatever it is that makes you happy to be playing the game.
It sounds so fun. Like the creativity behind it is really amazing. How did you come up with the idea for the game?
Well, my son and I were sitting chatting one day, and he kind of said something. So the germ of the idea came out of some conversation. Then I came over to Matt's house, and we were talking about what games we wanted to build. And I really didn't like the idea. I thought it's not going to work. And Matt latched onto it, and he's really together. We've driven this now based on his sort of initial insight into thinking that this was going to be a fun game. And I'm continuously surprised. People love this game. We sit down at a table, and there's laughter invariably, and people are making fun of each other and with each other. And so it sort of worked out.
Yeah, when I heard about the game idea, I said, wow, that's the game I really want to play. And also just tagging on something you said earlier, um, we have had a number of people come up to us after this game and say, I can't draw. I'm not very artistic, but I love this game because I can be artistic without having to draw. And it's so rewarding to hear that. People are like relieved and pleased to have some sort of artistic outlet in their gaming.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you've been making games together previously. It sounds like it's not your first game that you've built together.
Well, Matt's got a history. He's a published game designer, and he'll tell you about that in a minute. But this is my first foray, and working with Matt as a partner has just been invaluable because he's got so much to teach, and he's just constantly driving the project forward. And oddly enough, although our personalities are very different, we end up working well together. So, Matt, did you
I,
want to talk
That's
about your
great.
last
I
your
think
last
Arun's
venture?
blowing me up a little too much, but yeah, we do work really well together. It's been a lovely partnership. But we have had a few other games on the burner that's done. We've moved some prototypes along, but this is the one that's really seemed to have, struck a chord with people we've taken out to playtest with.
That's excellent. So it's the first game that you're like shipping together.
I don't know if we're shipping it yet, but it's out at 3 publishers right now, and
Oh
so
wow,
we've got
that's
our fingers
great.
crossed. Yeah, yeah.
That's excellent. Yeah, I was gonna ask like where you are in production. Like, yeah, it sounds like you're getting interest from publishers and like showing people what the game's all about.
It's been a little bit of a challenge, of course, with the pandemic, but someone had put together sort of a speed dating for board game designers on Board Game Geek, and publishers were invited to come and take a look, and a few people asked for prototypes, so we were happy to send them off.
That's amazing. I didn't know Board Game Geek was doing things like that. That is really, really cool.
I don't think it's Board Game Geek doing it specifically. It's just someone who used that as a forum to
Oh,
say,
I
hey,
see.
come and well, I'll organize this. It was a labor of love, very much. Just this person who had done game development work was hooking people up. It was wonderful.
That's amazing. I love how the board game community is like it feels like it's just such totally supportive community and very welcoming, easy for people to kind of get started and get their feet wet. So what's the team like for the game? Is it just the two of you?
Yep.
It is just the
Excellent.
two of us. Yeah, yeah.
And
And
then
all
and
our playtesters who we're
I
very
was
grateful
gonna say I'm
for.
probably a small army of playtesters, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right. Right. We shouldn't forget them.
So what's next for the company?
Well, we've been playing around with a couple of ideas, as Matt said. The furthest one along has to do with a group of people. And can we give it away, Matt? I think we can give it away. It's nobody's
Sure,
going to
yeah.
steal this idea. So it's a group of people that are sitting around a table. And the conceit of the game is that they can't talk because there's a pressure-sensitive device that they have to diffuse. And then it's a game of indirect information and occasionally potentially incorrect information that's allowing these folks to deduce the right path, the right set of steps, again, without talking. There are other ways to communicate in the game, and they're rather limited. Without talking, otherwise, bad things happen, to try and solve the problem of this device that's going to cause trouble.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. That's like right up my alley. I love that type of game. That sounds really, really fun. I look forward to hearing more about that.
Can't wait till we get the first prototype done. And we'll probably get it done, given we're working separately right now, we haven't been together. We'll probably get it done on something like Tabletop Simulator, and once it's out, we'll open it up for testing and so forth and see where
Excellent. And I think you were telling me that Shapely is on Tabletop Simulator, right? That you have it loaded up there?
It is. We just started playing with the platform, and it's fantastic for all the board game developers that are out there. This is something that I would highly recommend. If you can run, if you can work Photoshop, or if you can work Canvas or Excel or some of these fairly straightforward programs, this is something that they built a lot of stuff free into the platform. You don't have to code. Now, if you want to do some scripting and make it fancy and have it deal cards for you and so forth, then it requires a little bit of study. But for the most part, you can simulate a whole range of board game prototypes, certainly, in this environment. Yeah, so we've put it together. We haven't opened it up to the public just yet. We're tweaking it a little bit. And part of it is we'd love to get sort of an arrangement with a publisher going forward, but this will facilitate future meetings and interviews with folks that are interested in possible.
Arun, I think you've got it up. Do you want to give folks a peek?
I do.
Yeah,
is that okay? We can do that?
Absolutely.
All right, let me see if I can just share the screen seamlessly. We'll pop it up there. Let me know if you can see that okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just sort of the standard board and background that I've got here on the piece. So just a quick description of the game. We've got this board here. Matt, do you want to describe it, because you're so much better at it than I am, and I'll move the pieces as you talk.
Sure. Well, game starts, everyone gets a word card face down, and it takes a peek at that. And then they start trying to build the word. Like that person has telescope, so they'll use their pieces to make telescope. And when they're satisfied with their shape, they'll take their little disc marker and put it down on one of the spots on what we call the turn order track. You can put it in the first, the second, the third, or the fourth section, doesn't matter. Everyone has a little bit of a different bonus. You either get more points, or you might get an extra word card. So next turn you can choose from 2 different word cards, or you can get an extra shape piece, because of course as the game goes on, we're going to be losing shape pieces. Earlier you get maybe better bonuses, but then it's a little harder because there's more guess cards out there, or word cards, excuse me, for people to guess at. Later the bonuses are lesser, but there's fewer cards out there for other opponents to guess, so you might have a little bit easier time having your shape guessed.
So what you do after that is, everybody that's built something, assume there's something built here, you put your cards into the pile. These are the cards that are actively being drawn by the different players. And then we'd add a couple of dummy cards, cards that nobody has drawn, just to add to the mix, so that we can't just calculate out who's got what. We'd shuffle those cards real fast, and that's easily done like that. And then we'd flay them out in these different positions. So we've got a flashlight out there. We've got a seal. Let's see if I can do this with some dexterity. We've got a telescope. We've got a suitcase. And last but not least, we've got a beaver. So if there are 3 players that we're actively drawing, let's just assume this person is drawing something over here. We'd now then move to this track and start guessing what the green player did first. So we would look at that arrangement and we would ask ourselves, what could that be? And our choices are flashlight, seal, telescope, suitcase, and beaver.
Mm-hmm.
So we would now make a pick, and based on these cards here, which I'm just going to bring into my hand here, let me just do one thing. I'm going to make sure that I'm the white player, just for purposes of demonstration. I'll draw these 8 cards into my hand. I'm going to pick which number I think is the actual element here, what's being depicted. So to me, that looks like, if I had my druthers, that could be the opening of the telescope, or that could be a flashlight, the ray of a flashlight. So I might pick the number 1. I'll put that card face down and put it in the mix. Each of the other players would make their guess, and then we'd have the reveal. This player would indicate what their number was, what they actually intended to draw, because they fixed that. And so they would show us the number 1, for example. And then we would all reveal our cards. This person guessed, this person guessed number 1. This person guessed, I keep pulling up number 1s, number 2. So they're not going to get any points. Everyone who guessed correctly would get points. Everyone who guessed incorrectly would lose points, and so forth. And for the number of correct guesses this person generated, they would get points as well. And it would proceed over that sort of series.
And it's nice, even with rules explanation, you can run a full table, full 6 players through in 20 to 30 minutes, 30 minutes at the outside. Game goes really fast. It's a nice pace. Really happy with the arc.
That's great. It feels like the kind of game that people who don't typically like board games would still really like playing this game.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. We've seen the range. You can tell if someone's more casual gamer, they jump right into it. But then the gamey gamers like it as well, because there's this modicum of strategy and trying to fool and bluff, and to sort of see how they can angle it a little bit. And so you get the range, and people like it.
Yeah, with the gamers, by the end, some people will focus on getting more pieces. Some people focus on getting more cards. Some people on more points. The different bonuses, focusing on those. So by the end, everyone's has sort of a different setup.
And the trade-off here is, if you pick, for example, this benefit, your guess would happen towards the end, and so some of these cards would be gone. So in this case, there would only be 1 of 3, for example, that would be left, that you'd have to guess from with the 4th player. So going first might get you a better benefit, but you've got a tougher set of words to sort of guess amongst, or be guessed from amongst, if that's the correct sentence. I don't think it is.
Are all the shapes different, or is there like a standard set of shapes?
They're all different. There are 30 sort of unique shapes that we've created for the game. And we tried not to have any sort of canonical sort of shapes that made sense. They're weird polygons that we put together. And in the real game, in the physical game, they're, as Matt said earlier, they're tactile, and people really love playing with them. Some of the rules are you can't put a shape on top of another one. In the physical game, we've got magnets sort of on the flip side. So there's an asymmetry to the shapes, or a chirality, and you can put them together and compose them on this limited space here. And you have the right to use sort of 1 shape if you wanted to, or fewer than the number of shapes that you're given. And as time goes on, the shapes get either reduced, or you can get a bonus shape. The way you get a bonus shape is just draw a random one from the bag. And sometimes, depending on the word, it just works out. It hits you, you see it, and other times you're just perplexed and you're like, my goodness, I wish I had more shapes.
This is great. It looks really great in Tabletop Simulator too.
Arun did a nice job setting it up. Yeah.
It just works out. These are all the graphics that we put together independently. This is actually a physical board, and you can represent it really well in tabletop. Having said that, there's a toy quality, if you know what I mean, with this game, with this ability to put pieces together and construct them. And there's a fluidity, and it's just easier to do in real life.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's something about having that tactile, being able to actually, touch the
people
shapes
can't stop
around.
playing with the pieces once we get them out. It's really fun to see.
And the way we fashioned it in real life is these sort of easels are actually on a little slant, and so you can compose it, and then you turn it around. We've got little magnets that allow you to sort of show your shape. And as Matt said, people love that aspect.
That's amazing.
And then here, I don't know if I mentioned, it's a simple score track that sort of keeps track of. And at the end, the game is one of those games where, for the vast majority of people, the score is secondary. It's all about laughing hilariously at some sort of shape, or being amazed at the connection that somebody made with these obscure shapes and creating that incredible image.
So I wanted to switch gears a little bit to ask you about advice that you might have. So I've been asking everybody this, but let's say somebody is getting started, they've never created a board game before, and they want to do this. They want to do what you're doing. What advice would you give them for how they should approach getting started?
Well, normally I think I would say find a play test group and, show your game off. It's a little harder now, but Arun has really dug into Tabletop Simulator, and I'm becoming a convert. It's really a neat way to get your game out there. So I guess it's the same advice, is to play test, make a tweak, go back, play test again. But perhaps right now, do it digitally.
I would say the thing that I've learned the most is don't be married to any one particular idea. So there were some initial conceptions of this game, and it went through a number of iterations. And at some points we'd be stalled, and there'd be some weakness. The getting feedback from people and listening while folks are testing to sort of see where are the points of pain and where are the points of real joy, and focusing on those. Let that be a guide, and don't be married to any particular idea, because while I love strategic games. I love heavy games, much heavier than this. But I've always been surprised at the amount of joy that we get from what seems like a fairly straightforward game, in my estimation. Something that I joke with Matt all the time. When we first made this, I didn't think I was going to love it. But seeing that response in other folks has guided us. And letting that happen, I think, is important from a designer perspective. I mean, obviously, you want to think about balance and gameplay and all those things that a designer should be thinking about all the time, and novelty, and like, are you creating something that's new and fun? But let the audience guide you, let the customer guide you. I don't mean to make it crass, but that's what I've learned.
Yeah, I've been hearing from people that that playtesting as soon as possible has been super essential to their design and development process. And so I'm, curious if that's been similar for you.
Yeah, the sooner you can get something on the table, the better. Not only just so you can get the feedback quickly, but also, like Arun says, don't make your pieces too precious. Don't spend a lot of time in your prototype. Find out what works first. I know I've been guilty of that. I make this beautiful prototype. I pick the graphics with great care and write all this text for the cards, and then I find, oh, that doesn't work. All that work has been wasted. So, prototype quickly and incorporate the information you get from your playtesters.
The other piece I've learned, by really watching that is, he's found these angles and corners in the internet where there'll be like a competition for the game, or there'll be something like figs, or there'll be a playtesting group somewhere. Keep your eyes open for that and make connections in the community so that you can get out to a lot of these events. Because while we have great friends, at some point their ideas are going to be limited to the one or two times that they've seen it, and after that you're kind of burdening them typically to try it again, because I've seen that game, I want to try something new. So getting a wide audience, getting into competitions, getting into development type conferences, I think is a really good idea. It's a little bit of time, but you make connections. You never know who gets interested in your game. Go where publishers are. We're hoping that Figs is one of these places where we get to expose again. I think that's another important thing. If you really want your game published, it's something that you've got to continue. It's a bit of a hustle, but I think in the end, you establish yourself in the community, you make friends, which is great, and you learn about the process by getting active in that process. And it shouldn't be intimidating. At the end of the day, the game will speak for itself, and if you've got a good game, people will be interested. So.
Yeah, a friend of mine was telling me recently they gave a talk on networking, and they always open up the talk by saying, like, "Do you like making friends?" Networking is just making friends.
Right. And it's unlike a conference for, I don't know, computer security or something. At a gaming conference, at the end of the day, we all want to play games, and so
Yeah,
if they don't love your game, you'll make a gaming friend potentially. So there's no loss there.
That's excellent. So where can people find out more about Shapely? Where can they follow you on all the intertubes?
Well, right now we are on both Facebook and Twitter at @Shapely the Game, all one word. So you can find us either place. We haven't been super active in those places. Just things have sort of slowed down with the pandemic, but we'll certainly be posting our appearance at BostonFIG. It's going to be so much fun.
That's good. And then the tabletop, once we've got it smoothed out a little bit, we should open that up. Right now, it's we'll open it up selectively for folks that want to try it. And if you contact us on Facebook, we could probably arrange something like that as well. So.
Excellent. And we will see you at the show at your booth, and people can come by and find out more about Shapely and maybe get to play it with you.
It's
Awesome.
great. Yeah, BostonFIG is one of my favorite conventions. I just love it. And it's hard not being there in person, but so glad you guys are doing an online version.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to one of the things that's a really cool side benefit of this being the format that it is that we're able to actually have developers from all over the world that couldn't normally travel here for whatever reason, right? Like if it's just too expensive to travel all around the world to go to Boston Fig. So it's pretty cool that we're going to be able to expand to a larger audience because of that.
Terrific.
It's going to be great. And there's no silver lining to this horrible pandemic. But if we had to really stretch, I think it's brought, for example, a lot of my friends and family that didn't board game, for example, it's brought people together. And so board gaming has been a positive outlet and allowing people to be somewhat social during this unfortunate time.
Absolutely.
We're turning the corner. It's all going to be great. We're going to be there in person at the next to next Fig. So
yes, at the next Boston Fig.
Next, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and showing me Shapely and also showing me the tabletop simulator version of it that is up and running and looks like it's working great. And I will look forward to seeing you at the fest.
Thank you so much.
Very nice chatting with you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.